about myself. Gabe.
Well, you can, whatever.
No, we'll talk about both.
We're reading everything.
Okay. Hey everyone. My name is Monique Baena-Tan. I'm a design researcher at Code for America. How many of you know what Code for America does? All of you. Awesome. Cool. Well, I'll definitely talk about CFA. Gabe invited me here. I'm actually from Toronto. I was born and raised here. I did my undergrad at Queen's. And the first time we connected was a couple months ago when Gabe was organizing the Code Across event, which some of you might have attended in March. And the reason for that is because I work on the Brigade team at Code for America. Brigades are volunteer networks, volunteer chapters that exist all across the US and internationally as well, so Civic Tech TO would be considered a brigade as well. And I basically help manage that program, and I do a lot of research for them. So thanks for being here. I'm really excited to be here. Feels good to be back home. But I'm really looking forward to speaking to all of you and getting to know you all a little bit better. And we'll have some time at the end for Q&A, so looking forward to that. One of the things that I did want to say is that I don't come from a technology background. I actually come from a design, research, community organizing background. I'm very, very new to civic tech. I've only been in it for less than a year, so I'm sure I have a lot to learn from you all. And that's why I'm looking forward to the discussion at the end. But because of that, I thought it would be great. I thought it'd be great to just talk a little bit about the work I was doing before CFA. So prior to living in San Francisco, I was living in New York. I was doing a master's program and working with a lot of different nonprofits, doing research for them specifically to find various ways to create more participatory and equitable processes and planning. And so I was working in really, really multidisciplinary teams. We were coming from anthropology backgrounds, political science, gender studies, architecture, product design, and we would try and find really simple solutions to really complex issues, if that is something that we can come up with together. And some of the things that we came up with was tools like these. So this is Communities of Praxis. It's a tool that you can use to facilitate a conversation between groups who traditionally never meet or who traditionally never know each other, to talk about a public space or to talk about a street and to talk about the things that you actually care about in the city that you live in. And so it was a tool to facilitate a conversation that either would never happen, or if it did happen, it would happen under a setting like this, which is a community board meeting, which I'm sure you know is just really constraining and frustrating, and there's no space for dialogue or collaboration, and it just exacerbates the fact that we have really critical issues in our cities that we want to solve, but we have really limited resources, and when we come together, we're not actually talking about the problems we want to address. You're just being talked at, or you never have a chance to actually engage or to innovate and to collaborate with other people who live in the same city as you. So I spent a lot of time just doing a lot of research with people on the ground, asking them like what they wanted to see in their cities, trying to amplify their voices. And one of the ways that I would always describe my role in all of this is serving as an intermediary. And I'm sure you all feel the same way. You know, you're working between people at the top who usually make the decisions, and then you're communicating to the people on the bottom, and you're trying to amplify their voices, and you're trying to get them to come together. You're trying to build those bridges so that they can come together and they can talk about something and work towards a common goal. Because people don't need to agree on everything, but if you're working towards a common goal, it's much easier to find complementing points of interest, and then if you have those complementing points of interest, it'll feel like you're actually having a productive conversation, which is very rare, especially in the US. So it was just building those bridges, building trust between entities that traditionally never met with each other, never knew about each other, building empathy and really humanizing the process, and making communities and teachers and people who own restaurants and academics and designers and technologists, and making them realize that people who worked in those big scary government buildings, they're humans too, and they want to work with you and try and find solutions in the city that we live in. So it was great. They were coming together, they were engaging, they were thinking about really creative solutions, and then I noticed something was missing in the work that I was doing, in that these groups were coming together and they were proposing technical solutions to social problems, and I knew nothing about technology. And I still have a lot to learn about technology, but they're like, community involvement app. That seems like a really straightforward thing that we can build, and I didn't know how to talk about it because I wasn't familiar with technology. So I started working at Code for America in September. Code for America is a 6-year-old nonprofit. The mission is that we believe government can work for the people, by the people in the 21st century. And we build open source technology and organize a network of people who are dedicated to making government services effective for everyone. And we do our work through these 7 principles of 21st century government. So design for people's needs, make it easy for everyone to participate, build capacity through collaboration. You see that mostly through the Brigade Program, since we have brigades dispersed across so many different cities. Make data easy to find and use data to make and improve decisions, choose the right technology for the job, that one's my favorite, and organize for results. So we run 2 programs. One is a fellowship program and one is a brigade program. The fellowship program is a lot smaller. You get placed in a team of 3, usually a product manager, a designer, and a technologist, and you get placed in a city in the US and you work with that local government for a year. So you work with them to identify a need that you have in that city, and then you work with them to build it, and then you work with them so that you make sure that that tool that you build with them gets adopted after you leave. And then the Brigade program is the volunteer-based program. Sorry, can you just jump to? Yeah, so they're volunteer groups. They do the same thing. They collaborate with local governments and community partners to build tools that address civic issues. Just come back. Sorry. So the Brigade program stemmed out of people wanting to participate in the fellowship program and really believing in the mission, but not necessarily wanting to move to San Francisco, or not necessarily wanting to move to Kansas City or Albuquerque or wherever those government partners were. They wanted to do it in the cities that they lived in, the cities that they called home. But yeah, they didn't want to quit their jobs or anything like that. So that's why it's a volunteer-based program, so that you can do it on top of the work that you do during the day. And, sorry. Yeah, and can you click the link? So one of the things that I really want to highlight with the Brigade program is that because it's so dispersed and there's great people like Alex and Gabe and Patrick in different cities and in different countries actually, they're organizing these events so that people can actually have a space to come and talk about the issues that you see outside your door. And well, the meetup number is, that's the number that we follow quite closely, and so there's over 56,000 people on Meetup who have been really interested in groups such as these and who are active participants in their local brigade. And then if you just scroll up, sorry, and click the logo at the top. So I just wanted to show the map because it's really impressive. I think, at the beginning we're talking about why we're here. Since I've been working on the Brigade program now, every time I go to a new city, if there's a brigade there, I make an effort to go because it's just really inspiring to see groups like these in so many different cities. People like Patrick and the organizers here who are dedicated to providing the space and for providing a consistent space for people to come and meet and to talk about the issues in your city is really, really important. It empowers people and it just provides a space for collaboration, which I think a lot of us crave and a lot of us didn't have before this. So, do you want to go back to the pictures? Next slide. Yeah. So what have we been up to in 2016 for the Brigade program? It's grown really, really fast. Started in 2012, so it's only 4 years old, but it's grown really, really quickly, and we had the infrastructure and the strategy in place to really meet those numbers because our only goal was to build a movement. We wanted to have the people who knew what civic technology was, who were interested in civic technology, interested in collaborating, interested in government. And now that we have those people, we're sort of trying to think about what we want to do next. So if you want to just go to the next slide. This past Saturday was National Day of Civic Hacking, which is a really, really big day of action in the US. And it was huge. There were over 100 cities participating across the US. Thousands and thousands of people participated. They spent their weekend just hacking on different projects that they had identified, or hacking on different issues that they had identified in their cities. And if you go to the next slide, I mean, Twitter was just ridiculous this weekend. And if you go to the next slide, this was really exciting for us. I won't play it because it's like 4 minutes long, but if you have a chance, you should look at it. The Chief Technology Officer and Obama's Domestic Policy Advisor made this video specifically for the Brigade Network, thanking them for providing this space for community members and highlighting the importance of these spaces and people coming together and using their skills for good and actually collaborating on the issues that they see in their cities. And they really talk about the importance of building solutions with, not for, which is something that we all believe in and we all strive to do. So it was really exciting. So we have those numbers, we have attention from the White House. It's really exciting for us. But now we need to figure out a way to leverage our network so that we can go deeper and create impact. And it's been a challenge for us because the Brigade Network has never had a governance structure. So someone mentioned the importance of governance. We don't have a governance structure for the Brigade Network. So whenever we need to communicate something to them or whenever we need to make a decision, we send out an email or a Slack message to like 500 people, and it's a mess. And we don't have a system in place for making decisions in an equitable and transparent manner. So if you go to the next slide, that's basically what my role has been at the organization since I started, is just developing this research process, developing this co-creation process so that we can have the right people sitting at the table and we can make decisions together on what we want the future of the program to be, especially because we're at a pivotal moment. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, we're not done yet, we're halfway through. So TBD on the future of the Brigade program. But some of the things that people are talking about already are like an executive committee or an advisory board, something along those lines, so that when headquarters does have to make decisions about the program, then the people who are actually running those events can have a seat at the table and actually participate. So the research has been a little bit different than what I was doing before. It's a geographically dispersed community, so it's been a lot of like surveys and conference calls and Slack calls, and it's been challenging, but it's been really exciting. And if you go to the next slide, this is sort of how we've codified all the work that we're doing with the Brigade Network, is just in one Google presentation spreadsheet, which is getting really long, and we love Google Docs. But yeah, it's basically, so we're just codifying all the conversations that we're having, and then the brigade captains can go in and comment on the developments of the research. And it's just a really good way for them to hold us accountable, to make sure that we're consistently pushing through with this. And likewise for them, we can be like, hey, like on slide 80 something, you all never said anything about this controversial thing that we said, so we're gonna assume that you're okay with it. So I'm happy to share this document with anyone who cares and who sort of wants to see the progression of the research and the conversations we've had with the Brigade leadership. But just to sort of give you an idea, it also moves at a very slow pace because they're volunteers and they have day jobs and personal lives and whatnot. But we have a lot of ideation sessions scheduled for the summer, and that's what we're going to be doing next. And all of it culminates to Summit, which is our annual conference, which is in November. Kind of an abrupt way to end, but because the work is not done, and I wanted to make sure that we had some time for questions.
We do have some time for questions. If anyone has any questions? Anybody? Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yes, I will take the mic. Hi, I was wondering, what does it take for the government to buy in this vendorship or whatever relationship we can call it?
Totally, yeah. So it works, yeah, that's a really great question. It works differently for the fellowship than it does for the Brigade Network. I'll speak about the fellowship first because that one's a little bit more intense. It's actually an application process that government entities apply to. They apply to Code for America and they say that they're interested in doing a fellowship. So they know what they're getting into. They have a really, really strong idea as to what the expectations are, and they have a whole slew of prior fellowship projects that they can look at to sort of get an idea as to like what the scope of the project would be and like what their time commitment would be and what their staffing commitment would be, and then what are the outcomes once those fellows leave. For the Brigade program, it's really, really different depending on the city and depending on the group, because every city is different, and then every brigade will reach out to a different department within government. San Francisco works really, really closely with the business portal, and like New York works really closely with the Parks Department. So it really, really depends, and it's really up to those captains to go and introduce themselves and build those relationships with those entities within government. And a lot of it is like they usually don't walk away with having like a concrete contract, like these are the things you're gonna work on. It's mostly just, hey, we run this thing every Tuesdays, you should come, it's super fun. And I mean, it's great that there are so many people here that work in government, but it's actually pretty rare in the US, and people get really excited when like chief data officer is in the room and they're like, wow, they're real people. And so it's a lot about like just inviting them into the space and making them feel welcome and like encouraging them to have discussions with other people who are in the room. And then as the relationship grows, then it's up to them to sort of build those parameters around what it is they want to build together. That answer your question? Sweet.
Other questions?
Very interesting stuff. I'm interested in the relationship between sort of supported and paid resources and volunteer resources. So, you know, to give an idea of that, like of those 50,000, how many are paid and where does the money come from? I'm not asking for exact figures, I'm just looking for a dynamic and how that works and what you've been with it for a few years, so, you know, where is the right balance and how is Code for America finding that balance?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you asked that because it's a pain point for us. We actually used to fund the brigades. We used to give them an annual stipend because we wanted, like I said, we wanted to build that movement, we wanted to hit those numbers, we wanted to build those communities, those local communities. So we would actually give the brigades a stipend, and it was a small stipend. It was just to cover the cost of food and space and maybe a little bit of hosting, although now we get a lot of hosting and in-kind donations. But now we don't fund them at all. And to answer your question, like none of the volunteers get paid. None of them do. And it is a struggle for some of them, but it isn't for others. And it, again, really depends on the city. Like the big cities, Chicago, San Francisco, Boston, New York, they usually don't have any issues finding grants or finding funding. And that won't cover a salary, but it'll at least cover the food, it'll cover the space, it'll cover, you know, the projector, anything that they might need. It'll cover Post-its and like Sharpies. But other cities like Albuquerque have really struggled to find those foundations and to find those organizations that would support their work. So yeah, it's a good question, but none of them get paid. And it is difficult in terms of like, now we're thinking about re-strategizing and we're wanting to leverage the community and go deeper and create impact, and how do we do that without paying certain people? So it is something that it's for sure contentious. And does that answer your question a little bit?
I think you're saying it's an issue that we have to work on.
Yeah, it is.
Is there any efforts to get citizens to and not take on a whole RFP from the city, because I feel that's impossible to sustain, but to have access to some of the money that is allocated for all those massive projects? Yeah, is there any effort, in the, I guess it's a funding related question.
Yeah,
Is that anywhere doing that?
some of them have, some of the cities have done that. So for example, New York, for National Day of Civic Hacking, I mentioned the Parks Department. The Parks Department knows how great Beta NYC is and how committed the volunteers are, and they actually hired Beta NYC to sort of like run the event on Saturday. So Beta NYC got paid by the Parks Department to sort of help with that and to supplement the work that the Parks Department is doing for that. But it really, really varies, and I think, like, to answer your question about salary, like, it usually is never enough to, like, quite cover someone's salary. And it's an issue, and it's, of course, it's something that all the captains would want. Like, you know, if their dream job, if they could do that full-time, they would. And they're all trying to find ways to be able to get there, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
I might have missed this, but why did Code for America stop funding the brigade?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're a nonprofit, and the Brigade program just grew super, super quickly, and we just didn't have the resources to be able to, like, we had the resources to fund 10 or 15, and then didn't have the resources to fund all of a sudden 60 brigades. So that was mainly it. We're a nonprofit. It was really difficult for us to write grants specifically for that, you know, like for pizza and beer and space. So yeah, that's the reason why. And also we were really encouraging to build relationships with local partners. So we were like, great, now you don't necessarily rely on Code for America, which is based out in San Francisco, but you're relying on the other foundations and the other organizations that are around you, and that might force you to like build those relationships and have a stronger localized safety net.
What are some of the metrics, I guess, that Code for America uses to see their impact versus like, you know, Civic Tech or Beta's, Beta, like your...
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. Our biggest metric that we track is how many people from the Brigade Network get hired into government. That's what's really important to us, because we know that if those captains are in government, if they're leading a team in government, we know that they're doing what they were doing with their brigade, but in government, which is a huge win for us. And there's been a lot. Captain for Boston works for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He's a team, he's like Director of Innovation and Design, which is really awesome. And the captain for Anchorage is now Chief Innovation Officer for the city of Anchorage, which is awesome. And there's a few more, but that's our main metric for the Brigade program anyways.
I don't know how to properly articulate this question, but one of the conversations that I've had in this forum is the notion of open source, and then the notion of do you build it to a certain degree and then commoditize it. Code for America has had some great success, like Get Remix and all of those things. What is the position for Code for America between those two notions, like open source versus commoditized?
Totally. It's something that we still talk about a lot. And I don't think we know what direction we want to head in. I think definitely for the fellowship program and for the brigades, we definitely push open source. But one of the projects that we have, Get Snap, CalFresh, it's a mobile application to see whether you qualify for food stamps. And then you can access those food stamps in 5 steps, whereas before it used to be like 60 steps. And we're working on that application a lot. It's the one that is the most advanced out of all the projects that we've done. And we're in that conversation now because we want to spread it to several. We work in the county of San Francisco, and we want to spread it to multiple counties within California. And it's the conversation we're having now. And it's a debate that we're having internally, so I don't really know how to answer that question either. But certainly, in terms of like impacting communities at scale, we know that we can't do everything just solely based on open source technology, and that's a conversation that we've had. It works now within just the county of San Francisco, but if we want to go bigger and if we want to be in multiple states, then the structure around that's probably going to have to change.
Actually, that just kind of answered my question, which was, do you have stories of projects or products that took on a life of their own, or are really having true impact, and I guess the food stamp one. And if there are any other examples that come straight to mind.
The food stamp one is definitely, I mean, that one's like our flagship project for sure. It's developing really quickly, and we're seeing the impact that it's having on communities quite immediately, which is really great for us. The other one is Adopta, which it's essentially like, so it started in Boston. You can adopt a fire hydrant and sort of make sure that there isn't any snow on it. And it's an application that you use to do that. And the way that it was built made it really easy for it to be redeployed in multiple cities. And so a lot of other cities have taken it on and adapted it to their local needs. So San Francisco has adopted drain. We had El Nino this past fall, and so we had a lot of rain. And that's sort of one that's really taken a life of its own within the Brigade Network. And it sort of spread really quickly. And that one actually started as a fellowship program in Honolulu. It was, you could adopt the sirens for the tsunami warnings. Yeah.
Other questions?
Hi, so I just have a question about how your international teams work, like the International Brigade. So do they like code for their cities, or are they coding for American cities?
No, they're coding for their own cities.
And are there any examples of success abroad?
So the international brigades run much more independently. Different governments, different structures. So they're actually a little bit much more detached from Code for America than the brigades that are within the U.S. And I would say a huge success would probably be Code for Japan. They are super active. They have over 100 brigades in Japan, and they're also just really observant. Like every time something comes up in the U.S., they'll be like, "Oh, look, we took it and we translate it, and here it is." And they're just really fast. I've always been really impressed by all the work that they're doing. Code for Poland and Code for Germany have been really successful in getting grants, they've done a lot of work around developing civic user testing groups. So kind of like organizing a sub-volunteer group under their brigade specifically to test the things that they're building in their brigade, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool. Any last questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.